Okay, we got one up here from PMars. Let's see what this one's about.
What would you like to say?
The Bible's not demonstrably true. Um, there's no evidence of a great flood at all. Like,
Well, I would say, but to even, I would say the Bible would be necessary for evidence that the proof for God is that you couldn't prove anything without God.
what?
Well, like,
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think these dudes understand, ultimately.
when two people disagree about what's true, what ultimate authority would decide who's right?
I don't know.
Well, it's Jesus.
There is no ultimate authority. That's not a thing.
Well, then
The ultimate authority is that there is no ultimate authority.
you couldn't deny God because God,
Yes, I could.
well, no,
Right, he can without authority.
you would just,
I just did. I just said there's no
but
absolute authority.
but there'd be no force, there'd be no authority behind your claim.
Yes, and the force and the thrust behind the point is key when you get into ethics with these guys. These moral relativists, they're done. Actually, if you take that angle, all their argument results in, well, all the information I've laid out and pointed out, I can't really say if you should or if you ought to take it seriously or apply it. I'm just hoping you will.
So
Yeah, there would be. The fact that there is none.
what authority are you appealing to say that?
Uh-oh.
The fact that there's no evidence that there's an absolute authority.
No, that's a non-answer, dude. Listen to his question. The fact that you can't find evidence for something doesn't mean you can claim that it doesn't exist. That's what he's pointing out here.
Is none.
What authority are you appealing to say that?
The fact that there's no evidence that there's an absolute authority. Where has the absolute authority exhibited itself except for in the Bible? Where is his absolute authority out in the world?
Do you believe that we should be consistent and not contradict ourselves?
Excellent question. He's got a moral embedded into the question. He's got the assumption or presupposition of the laws of logic right there. That's a great question.
Do you believe that we should be consistent and not contradict ourselves?
Yeah, I guess.
Wow, he got the answer right away. J. Dyer spent like an hour and 15 minutes with ask yourself, trying to avoid that should claim. And there's a reason they want to avoid it, because it basically collapses their argument into, well, that's my argument, so to speak, but I'm not sure how to use it. It doesn't have any force behind it. It has no thrust behind it.
When you say there's no absolute authority, that's a claim about an authoritative claim about absolute authority. So that's contradiction.
There might be an absolute authority. I don't see one ever.
Okay, now we've got a different stance, right? How quickly the secular philosopher, the autonomous philosopher, their stances shift when they need it to. If you notice too, what happens with these guys when they start to get cornered is the tu quoque comes out. That's how you know you're cornering them. You're pinning them down. Wait for the tu quoque. You're doing it too. You do it too. It's a concession if you think about it. They admit that they're doing it, and they're trying to posit that you're doing it too. So not only do they concede that's what they're doing, they walk into a logical fallacy. Double whammy.
Ever. Absolute authority. I don't see one ever.
Well, you either would affirm one or not.
I don't affirm one.
Or that entails the contradiction.
What?
Well,
He's making an authoritative claim about authority. He doesn't understand this. He has to have something behind his claim about authority.
You said we should not contradict, but if you reject an absolute authority, that would be a contradiction because you're making an authoritative claim about absolute authority, of which you say there is none. So it's a contradiction. But you said you didn't want to. We shouldn't contradict, but you're contradicting.
So maybe he's thinking like, oh, okay, I see that, right? 99% of the time, people just want to keep going. They just want to keep talking. Rarely do you get someone to say, wow, I never thought of it like that. Okay. Rarely do you get that.
So you actually never rebutted my claim about the flood either.
Oh, see, go back to the flood, right? There's the red herring. Although he can call it because it did come up prior, but they've been unpacking something here for, over a minute. Besides, the flood claim is also going to rely on some authority. So it's all relevant. So that, you could call him for that. Oh, you're running to the flood right here.
I'm just going to highlight that. But the fact that you're playing like semantics and word games to like prove God exists is just really like exemplative of how you have to jump through hoops to prove that God exists. There's
Mino like what you're doing, playing word games, word salad. You get this a lot. Is he giving a rebuttal? Is he becoming authoritative on the matter to make an argument? No, he's just yapping. Like I said, they just want to keep talking.
The fact that you're playing like semantics and word games to like prove God exists is just really like exemplative of how you have to jump through hoops to prove that God exists. There's no like the Bible is demonstrably true. You didn't even reference the Bible when I talked about the flood. You just referenced like semantic word games. I don't know.
Yeah, he ended it with I don't know. That's proper. Like all that stuff he said, I don't know. Sometimes you just when you read the transcript, it's a very different outlay, right? The information's there, and sometimes it's just a manner of speaking. Like you just get people admitting things, even though you can argue that it's just phraseology used at the end of a sentence. I don't know, but I think it comes into play well here. He doesn't know. That's what he's pointing out. Like his claims are not authoritative by his own account, and he's implying that PMars is jumping through hoops or playing word games, but he can't make an argument that that's wrong except his subjective opinion.
Well, because if we reject the Bible, then nothing would mean anything, and which would apply to your rejection of the Bible. So I'm pointing out there's a contradiction, and you would undermine the meaning of anything by denying God. Nothing would.
No, I wouldn't.
Well, meaning requires like a fixed reference point. So without a fixed reference point, nothing means anything.
Good, right. Like get into a transcendental category. How are you bringing in meaning, right? Like the nihilist. Nothing has any meaning. Okay, so how are we going to have a conversation? And you've also destroyed the very fundamental claim nothing has any meaning, trying to bring meaning to it.
So you can't deny the fixed reference point, because that's like denying the meaning of your words.
No, I can say there's no God, and that doesn't prove that there's a God.
Okay, but now you're contradicting yourself. But you affirmed that it's wrong to contradict. So I don't know how to reason with you.
Right.
Yeah, so PMars take an interesting angle here, which he's not going to understand. The kid's not going to understand that he's dismissed his own authority to make such claims, but he wants to keep going. So he's likely just going to keep playing that out. We'll see.
It isn't wrong to contradict. I can contradict myself as.
Oh, wait a second. Now that's a weird turn. It's not wrong to contradict. Okay, here we go.
So I don't know how to reason with you.
Right, it isn't wrong to contradict. I can contradict myself as much as I fucking want.
Okay.
The fact that you can do something, does that make it right or wrong? Does the capability carry over to the moral? Like, how is he using it that way? Oh, I can do that, therefore it's not wrong. Of course, PMars is pointing out that he can't really do anything based on his worldview so far without authority. If he's going to be contradictory, well, he's going to have to use the law of non-contradiction to be contradictory. And if he's saying it's not wrong, well, then you challenge his system, his ethical system, which is whatever he feels. And in this case, this kid's like, well, I feel like saying contradictions are cool. It actually follows the state of mind that he holds, the presuppositions, the mishmash, the nonsense that he's bringing into the conversation is playing out here nicely.
But the fact that you have to like put me in like word games to like prove that your God exists.
Again, word games is just, I don't understand. Word salad is, I don't understand what you said. It's not a point that your interlocutor is making anything. If you don't understand what he's saying, ask for clarification. To say it's word salad or word game is doing you no good.
If you haven't referenced the Bible once, or you haven't referenced theology once, you've just talked about how I'm contradicting myself, therefore you must be right.
He's saying he hasn't referenced theology once, and he said that without God, you can't do anything. You can't know anything. You have no authority. So he's referencing it on a meta level.
Again, how is there any evidence at all for a great flood? At all. Where is the scientific evidence for that? We have thousands of years of archaeology record, so like we can go through sediments from millions of years ago.
So this kid has great faith in whatever he's been reading, right? The latest trend in Science Weekly. You know, people who rely on science, especially these inductive theories that go back thousands, millions, billions of years, like that's a lot of faith. It sure is. And how do you know that people bringing this information don't have an agenda behind it? They never really know those things. I mean, if you look into like the scientific journal, The Lancet, the well-known journal, it's been credited for having like 50% falsified material. So once you can realize that there's a percentage or there's evidence of falsified material, what is it that you have faith in these scientific journals and these scientific communities and these people that you don't know? Unless you know how the science works, you just have complete blind faith in what you're reading.
There was never a great flood.
Right,
Not while humans existed.
You say I'm playing games, but I take this Bible very seriously. And if you play games with God's word, like what you're doing right now, you're going to go to hell. And I'm just...
Yo, I don't want to be in heaven. Send me to hell. I would blow if I had to worship this dickhead all the time.
Yeah, this is the rebellious attitude. So you're willing to destroy yourself just because of your pride.
Oh, God, I am.
That's the same thing with Satan. He's like,
Bro, he's kind of raw.
You feel alienated and enslaved by the world's slave system. And so as an act of defiance, you're going to do something irrational to prove that you're free, which is an act of self-destruction. And
I would rather go to hell than spend eternity worshiping a god. That also sounds like a hell to me.
There's still time for you to turn away from the darkness and to the light, and I urge you to repent.
I've repented before. Nothing happened. Nothing changed. My life stayed the exact same. God has never reached out to me once.
Well, so there's a lot of people. Welcome, neighbor.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing well. What would you like to say?
Oh, nothing. I couldn't imagine the overwhelming patience you have to deal with that type of dialogue.
Oh, well, yeah, it's the fruit of the Spirit.
Fruit of the Spirit. Good man. Good man. I'm a Christian, by the way.
Okay, well, I'm trying to talk witness to non-believers because I got kind of in a hurry here. But
Fair enough. Fair enough.
thanks for your support, man.
Yeah, no
God
problem.
bless.
God bless.
Yeah, I'm trying to like get some. This place I want to go eat at closes soon. Welcome, neighbor.
What's up, brother? Wait, what does number 4 say? Does that say science proves?
Science needs our Lord Jesus Christ.
Science. Could you explain what you mean by science needs?
That without Jesus, science wouldn't work. Science only works because Jesus is Lord.
See, the thing about PMars is it's interesting. He has a very deadpan, straightforward approach most of the time. And the way he's worded is like, you need Jesus for science. When you throw that out there like that, it makes people's heads spin, right? They're like, what are you, how on earth can you even say that? But he has he's obviously adhering to the transcendental argument, the revelation of God through Jesus Christ. He has all that behind him, but he can word it like that because it stays in the correct framework. It stays as truth, but it makes the atheist head spins. In addition, perhaps to the straightforward kind of deadpan, non-reaction type of personality here. I mean, most of the time, from what I've seen.
Science actually rejects the fact that Jesus was even a divine entity.
Science rejects that Jesus was divine. Science doesn't recognize a divine entity. To say it rejects it would be a malformed point. It can't really reject what it can't test. It's not a category that it experiences, so it doesn't reject it. It's like kind of like you're looking for rubies on the beach with a metal detector, right? Something like that.
Right, because science is a tool where we try to understand the natural world, and try to understand things independently of God, like as if God didn't exist. But it's just like a thought experiment. It's not real.
I mean, wouldn't it be more rational to appeal to empirical evidence over any other form of evidence?
Yeah, that's what I was saying, PMars. You do it on purpose to get their attention. It's not bad. Not bad at all. So what is he saying here? Wouldn't it be more rational to appeal to empirical evidence than any form of evidence? Well, I mean, not all things are worked out the same, right? What do you appeal to empirical evidence when you're doing mathematics? When you're dealing with the laws of logic. In fact, most of the important things, the fundamental constituents of reality, the transcendental categories, we don't find through empirical evidence. That's exactly what PMars is arguing here. Your a priori commitments, which you lack in.
But empirical evidence wouldn't be rational without a foundation in God's revelation. It would just be magical thinking. Like,
nice, throwing magical thinking, right? Another attention grabber. You're thinking magically.
there'd be no reason to think the external world is even real without God telling us it's real.
I mean, but like metaphysics, right, asks what it means for something to exist, and then empiricism answers logically. We can only know what we can observe.
How does this kid unify metaphysics and empiricism, by the way? You get a lot of this with these physicalists and materialists. They just assume metaphysics. How are they unifying those two fields? They just grant themselves, don't they?
A measure of our experience. So it's rational to follow.
That's self-defeating, because
even a claim like it makes more sense to follow things rationally. You ask, okay, how did you come to that claim? How did you come to that determination? They're pulling in a philosophy that doesn't have to do with rationalism to make that claim about rationalism.
Because you're saying that, like, well, we should only the only knowledge worthy of consideration is the knowledge we obtain through sense data, but that statement isn't in sense data, so it's self-defeating.
Yeah, right. That's the same point. Nice.
And I didn't say only. I said it's like the most.
That's what empirical.
Yeah. He's going to try to work around it, right? Yeah. William Van Orman Quine, The Two Dogmas of Empiricism. The analytic is going to be the a priori, the synthetic. It's going to be more what he's talking about, like the empirical evidence.
Empiricism is.
Yeah, that's if you're an empiricist. I'm not saying like being an empiricist. I'm saying empirical evidence itself is the most reliable source to truth. Like when you're making truth claims.
It's the most reliable. So he's given a different statement, but he's either missed or ignoring what PMars said, like the arrival at empirical evidence being a good source, a better source, a reliable source isn't found through empiricism. I'm guessing he completely missed that and realized something's wrong. So he's going into this now.
That's a not.
So being an empiricist, I'm saying empirical evidence itself is the most reliable source to truth. Like when you're making truth claims,
That's a non-empirical claim, so it's
Yes.
self-defeating. That's what I'm saying.
It self-defeats it because it's a non-empirical claim.
Empirical evidence is the best type of evidence, but that
Yeah.
statement isn't empirically verified, so it's self-defeating.
It's not empirically verified, so it's self-defeating.
It's
I mean,
not-
well, there's other forms of evidence.
This is literally
It's like he was almost going to get it. He was going to consider it, and then he jumps to there's other forms of evidence, which is good though, because that does need to be pointed out to him. So, but he's jumping from learning something important here. Well, maybe we'll see.
verified, so it's self-defeating.
It's not empirically verified, so it's self-defeating.
It's
I mean,
not-
well, there's other forms of evidence.
This is literally the most basic critique in academia of empiricism. You don't know it? Maybe you should go hit the books, bro.
I don't know. Jesus, wait, can you repeat that? Sorry.
I just gave you the most basic critique of empiricism.
Critique on empiricism, yeah, but
The most basic academic critique, and it's like you're stun locked on the most basic things in
Oh,
academic
PMars coming alive. Look out.
philosophy. So you're probably not ready for this discussion. Maybe.
Sounds kind of mean, but it's actually accurate. Like if he's just learning that today, like there's so much that's going to get in the way of this conversation and continuing, right? So, it's warranted. It's warranted to say that.
Maybe, right?
okay. So science need. Could you still haven't explained though why science needs?
Because science is a study of a rational order in nature, right? So you need a rational ordering principle, the logos, and that's Jesus. Jesus is the logos, the ordering principle. No principle, no order. No rational order.
That would just apply to like other.
If science isn't studying a rational order, then science is irrational. So you're going to take that bullet? Are you going to say science is irrational?
No, I didn't say it's irrational. I just said it still doesn't prove. It still doesn't prove that it needs Jesus Christ because other people could apply that to their religion.
What other principle is there for the rational order?
When they say other people can apply their religion, that's where you bring up the worldview argument. That's true. They can. I can talk to Hindus. I can talk to Buddhists, whoever. I'm going to have my worldview, but I'm going to address that conversation a little bit differently. However, I'm talking to you, an empiricist right now.
Order. What's the other candidate for the rational ordering principle?
What's the other candidate? No. What I'm saying is the logic you just used, it could be applied to other religions.
Well, do it. Don't just say it, right? Put your money where your mouth is. Go for it. So what other candidate can be the rational?
I mean, you're right. So you said science needs the Lord Jesus Christ. You could say science needs I don't know what's Islam's got Allah. I've had Muslims say this too.
No, you're arguing for something you don't even believe. Why don't you just defend your view?
Yeah, right.
Okay. Well, do you know? Okay. Science needs the Lord Jesus Christ. Well.
Yeah. How can science work given your view?
I believe Jesus Christ existed, obviously, historically.
But you don't think he's God.
I just don't think he was a divine entity. I reject the resurrection.
But
I
then
don't.
there has to be another rational ordering principle. What's that?
Another rational ordering principle.
Yeah, like a rational authority.
Cosmos, reality, right? This is what you get. Reality is reality.
I didn't have to. I don't believe there is a rational authority.
Is there a
Ew.
rational order?
No.
There's no rational order, so we're just magical thinking.
So he just collapsed science and empiricism.
No.
That's what Bonson's talking about. You just bring the rope and they'll hang themselves. That's what he just did.
They're not magical thinking.
So are we being rational or not, dude?
Are we being rational in
When
general?
we use logic, are we being rational? When we debate, are we being rational?
Sure.
Sure. Okay. So wouldn't we need a rational order, or is it just
Why
pretend
did that
rational?
order? So are you referring to that order being like an entity, though? Why does it have to be an entity?
Look, I'm not.
He doesn't even know anything about what it is or could be. So now he's just resorting to, why does it have to be the thing you're saying, right? He has nothing to offer. He has no way to rebut PMars. So I guess if he was being honest at this point, it's not a bad question. I just don't get the feeling he is. I feel like he's a little defeated and he's just sort of repeating PMars and trying to look for something. And this is quite common, right? Like you pull in a defeater right away and they want to save face so that, they don't want to admit it. They might want to deflect it, pretend it didn't happen. So it just becomes a task of them pointing out logical fallacies, or in this case, just dismantling his own position, which is key. And, that's the thing. Like, is PMars going to bring this kid to Jesus today? No. But like, if he does this in a delicate enough manner, in a way the kid receives the information, he can at least stop, pulling in the information in the non-theory that he was trying to pull in before, and say, I have to think about this a little more. I have to bring something to the table before I just go and say, Jesus can't be the starting point for this or that. Like, what am I actually arguing with? What is the authority, the thrust behind my argument?
Why are you jumping ahead?
Yeah, but that's what you're
I'm trying to walk you down a chain of reasoning. Why are you so
because that's what you're referring to, right?
Why are you so resistant to reason correctly?
Yeah, PMars, I'm not going to change their mind. Yeah, well, I'm in a similar vein as you are. Like, I don't typically get into Bible studies unless I'm with other believers. I don't just quote the Bible for people who spit on the Bible. I want to say, where are you coming from? What's your ultimate authority? Right? Like, what's your ethical system? I want to get them to reconsider how they're arguing, why they're confidently showing up to, believers' channels, and they don't even have a foundation to speak of. I think that's effective, and I think there's certain people that are going to do that. And that's fine. I just think that the key is how we do it. Like 2 Timothy 2:22 through 25, in a certain gentleness in the approach, because it's actually quite devastating. Like what's already happened in this conversation, the way I see it. Like the empiricist just, hung himself. Basically, he's in learning mode. He should be. He should be in submissive learning mode. Like, wow, yeah, he just pulled the rug out from under me. So how this ends, how you end this, I think is everything. It's the way I look at it. It's not always easy to be patient, because a lot of times they keep talking, and then you want to point out the logical fallacies, which is an additional lesson, and they just get more and more defensive because they just keep losing points and so forth and so on.
Okay, all right. How about this?
So we have a rational order, right?
All right, yeah, sure.
Or else we're magical thinking. So if there's a rational order, then we need a rational ordering principle, because the rational order doesn't just poof out of thin air. So
Yeah, PMars, you are more aggressive typically. The thing about being aggressive is you have to be able to maintain your composure, because it's a very tricky balance. I find that being aggressive, maintaining composure and clarity of thought, but it's not impossible. And I would say that sometimes there is definitely a need to be aggressive. I would look to Jesus flipping the tables. Jesus was typically a peaceful man, mild mannered. But at certain points, like, people are just not getting it, and you got to flip that table and bring out the switch.
that's going to require a transcendental mind
Yeah, why is it going to require a mind?
to organize the rational order so we have unity and diversity. To account for unity, you need intentionality to account for the connections between objects. There has to be.
What if it's just random though?
What?
What if it's just random?
Then there's no connections between anything, and then there's no rational order.
So does rational.
Yeah, what is the connection and the unifying idea behind calling everything chaos, right?
Magical thinking again. So you're so resistant to just the obvious truth that there's a God, because this is your sin. So sin, like it says, the Bible says, professing to be wise, they became fools. Sin literally makes your reasoning like screwed up, where you can't see what's obviously true.
Romans 1:22. Yeah, I mean, really, Romans 1 is so important in this type of witness. The creator-creature distinction is key, even in going against all these different, when you come in contact with these different monistic religions. But a lot of these secular religions, these reality type of BS is monistic too. They try to lump everything into a single foundation of everything, and then they start making all sorts of distinctions whenever they want to. So Romans 1 talks about that distinction, but also, Romans 1:18 through 22, the suppression of the truth, that everything has been made plain to us in the unseen and the seen, and we're without excuse. But like he's pointing out here in Romans 1:22, he just keeps talking because of his fallen nature. He's trying to be wise, but he's just ended up being a wise guy.
Jesus is obviously true.
It's just nothing you're saying is linking to divinity. It's not linking to a divine mind. You're saying that this thing doesn't have to be an entity. This thing you're talking about, it doesn't have to be an entity. It doesn't have to be.
It's big claims he's making. How's he going to back that up? Do you have the time or patience? Probably not.
Like a mind.
He's just flip-flopping, right? Why does it need to be a mind? Now he's telling you it doesn't have to be a mind.
Then the reason is an illusion, because your at base reality would be a blind process, and any order we talk about would be an illusion, because there's nothing connecting anything together.
Sure, it could. I mean, it could be, but it's just, once again, it doesn't.
Sure, it could be, he says. Right. This is like simulation theory, even Buddhism, right? All is illusion. What happens when you concede that you might be in an illusion, and you make arguments? Well, now you're an illusion making professions and acclamations that are illusory, self-defeating.
Requires intentionality. So no intentionality, no unity.
There's no proof there is intentionality, though. That's just going to be.
Well, then there's no reason for us to argue. This is all pointless. There's no meaning.
I mean, well, there is a reason for the debate.
If we disagree.
How did he rebut that? Oh, yeah, because there's reasons to debate. Like, what are those reasons? He's not even following the conversation.
What ultimately decides who's right?
Well, the point of a debate is to try and come to some level ground, like understanding.
There's no point to this debate. We might as well be talking about Goku and Super.
Well, right. So you're gonna have to prove what you're saying.
Debating. We're fake debating right now.
No, we're not. No, we're not fake debating. I'm not being
real. This isn't real.
Yeah, he is fake debating based on your standard, dude. Or you guys are fake debating based on the lack of any unifying principle or intelligible reasoning behind how you get to a place where there is a right and wrong, where there is truth. You have no idea, but you've come in here saying, me no like Jesus. That's basically your argument. Me no like Jesus.
What? There's no authority to determine who's right, so anything can be true without an authority. So this isn't a real debate. This is like talking about our opinions. But I would like to debate reality, but you seem hesitant to do that.
But
You deny reality as an atheist?
I deny reality as a
Well,
reality.
you're hesitant to debate. I keep begging you to debate reality, and you're in anime la land talking about your opinions. Like, I'm not really that interested in that. I'm kind of interested in reality.
Once again, you're just
That's actually a great approach, a great reversal approach he's using here. He's pointed out that he's bringing really nothing to the table, that everything could be chaos or illusory. So when these guys typically come in saying that you believe in an imaginary, superhero or superpower, he's now saying you brought us to imaginary Goku anime land. It's a complete reversal. It's well done, actually.
you haven't linked this authority to a divine mind. It could why does it have to be a divine mind? You haven't answered that directly.
That I haven't done something, right? That's an authoritative claim. What authority do you have to say that?
Yeah, right. He's assuming that he's supposed to have done something there. Like, you can even call that, like, why would I even do anything? Which is like the meta-ethical question, like, why ought I even take you seriously? It's funny when you ask somebody that, like, if they really ponder that, they're like, I want you to.
I don't. It's just the question.
So again, you have
Did that directly.
that I haven't done something, right? That's an authoritative claim. What authority do you have to say that?
I don't. It's just the question.
So again, can we debate reality, or are you just endless la anime land? Because I don't want to do that.
I mean, are you gonna answer the question or not?
Okay, thanks. You're not answering any of my questions.
What?
And then you're
All right. Well, that was it for that. That was pretty good, PMars. A lot of good moves there, really. They're pulling him into La La Land based on his own account. That's a good move. I started considering that myself, like all these different ideas being brought to the table. Like, wow, you have quite the imagination in how you're thinking about these things, But the comic book or the anime reference is right there with it. If you want everything to be an illusion, let's just, what are we talking about? Yeah, right. Proverbs 26:4-5. And takes a little discernment, but yeah, you want to answer certain things a certain way, and then you just don't even want to address certain things. That's the balance right there. It's a key. Yeah, right. Right. Don't let them force you in your prepositions. Look at this guy, sir. I was told you needed some help understanding how humans separate objects or things. In short, it's property clusters within some kind of topography, physical or non-physical. Well, thank you for that, Serb. Reality is reality. Did you catch T-Jump was doing a debate? Because I'm guessing that you got this reality is reality philosophy from. But he was just debating somebody on presuppositional apologetics. Oh yeah, absolutely, PMars. He's just trying to. That's basically what you have to constantly point out is they're just assuming their position. And you start saying, well, how do you know that? Like, where do you start? What is true? And he's like, oh, there's no authority. I don't know. Science is truth. And you're like, well, okay, science, we can come to some things in the physical world. It assumes philosophies to even get there. But I'm asking you how you're assuming these transcendental categories. You're bringing in things that seem to have meaning and value. It's assumed within your speech. I want to know what the authority is behind that. how you came to know meaning and value. Stuff like that really throws people off because they've been assuming it the whole time. And it's not just that you're throwing them off. You know how to navigate that conversation. You know to continue that conversation. When they start steering away from it, you have to keep redirecting, pulling them back. All right, well, I'm going to go back to some music. We'll see what happens next. Trustee Ape.
Hello.
Hey man, how you doing?
Good. How are you tonight?
Doing all right. What you got going on?
Oh, just hanging out. We finished up dinner and yeah, just kind of winding down for the evening. It's been a busy week, so.
Yeah, that's all right. What you got on your mind?
Well, I got a lot on my mind, I suppose. But yeah, I saw you were critiquing PMars' video there earlier.
Yeah, he just submitted one, so he checked it out. If you had something you wanted to critique, you can do that.
Yeah, let me see if I got anything here. I know I've got a couple of things. There was one I was going to do earlier from Alexandra Myers. I don't know if you've heard of her.
No, is she a descendant of Peasy Myers?
No, completely different. Yeah, totally different thing. Um, she she used to do like entertainment content, and then she got into kind of the whole like streamerverse thing, I guess, and covered a lot of other content creators. And but now she's been doing Bible studies, and I find that really fascinating. She's kind of contended all along that she's a Christian, but I personally have been doubting that a bit. Well, not her sincerity, but like her history with the church. I don't know. That's one thing I got in here. I put it in the side chat there. If you want to look at it.
So you think it's more about you critiquing what you speculate about her character and her honesty than the content she's providing, or a blend of the two?
Yeah, a bit of that. I mean, people in the YouTube sphere, I think, that claim to be Christians but don't seem to be very knowledgeable in the scriptures and things like that. I tend to see a lot of that around here. And it's not super important, but
Well, yeah. I mean, PMars and I was talking about that on his critique. If you noticed, like we're two examples of people who don't go into Bible studies with atheists. Typically, we want to explore the philosophies that they're bringing prior to the conversation. So there's different types of witnessing. How's
yeah,
that?
I get that.
Yeah.
So she's not, like I said, she is professed to be a Christian, so that's why I find it kind of interesting given her behavior over the course of the time I've been watching her. But now in these Bible studies, I just see that there are certain things that even I know, in my studies as an atheist, that seems like it's just going over her head. I don't know if it's worth our time. You can decide, but
Yeah, we can check it out. It seems like she's conveniently utilizing the Bible. You might be hinting.
yeah, I mean, I think it's an attempt to like appear to be involved, like because she has claimed to be a Christian all this time, and I know she's been doing these Bible studies for a while, but I've just like it makes me wonder if she's ever actually listened to someone preach a sermon.
Okay. All right, let's check it out.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whatever time it is, wherever in this world it is that you are. Welcome once more to another live stream of Alexandra Mayer's Live, page by page reading and commentary of the modern English version of the Bible. I hope all of you out there are having a good week so far. We're about in the middle of the work week, Wednesday. I'm feeling pretty good. Pretty good. I have a few errands that I need to run after I complete today's reading and commentary of the Bible. And then I'll just be working the rest of the evening, I suppose. But today we're going to get back into the second book of Kings, chapter 18, which covers Hezekiah, king of Judah, and also Sennacherib invades Judah. So this should be interesting. Here we go. In the 3rd year of Hoshea, son of Elah, king of Israel, Hezekiah, the son of Ahaz, king of Judah, became king. He was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Abi, daughter of Zechariah. He did what was right in the sight of the Lord, according to everything that David his father had done. He removed the high places, broke down sacred pillars, cut down the Asherah poles, and crushed the bronze serpent that Moses had made. For until those days, the Israelites had made offerings to it. They called it Nehushtan. Well, that's good. He got rid of the high places. He did the right thing. And that was probably a very controversial move in those particular days. You know, it's very important that you research whatever you decide to worship or whoever you decide to worship before you do, because sometimes you'll be under the impression that a certain deity or energy is
Wait, so she's talking about God shopping all of a sudden?
Right. Yeah, she comes into that. I don't know if, I mean, for me, like Hezekiah, like stuck out, and she's going to continually, say Hezekiah or whatever, like she's never heard it before, and I was like, this is pretty standard. Like I've heard this a lot. But yeah, and her interpretation about where she's saying like he's removing high places or something like that. I thought was a little bit like she's equating it to Tower of Babel, but that's not actually what's being talked about here. Right?
Oh, was she?
That was the feeling that I got.
Well, we can't be arguing from feelings now, Ape.
A-okay, but if you really look into whoever or whatever that is, you might find something along the lines of it being rooted in something like child sacrifice or something, and that's not what the Christian God wants for you. So do your due diligence and research things before you worship them. That way you can live a good life. Anyway, let's continue. He trusted in the Lord, God of Israel. Afterwards, there was no one like him among all the kings of Judah or among those who were before him. He clung to the Lord. He did not depart from following him, but kept his commandments, which the Lord commanded Moses. The Lord was with him. Wherever he went, he prospered. He rebelled against the king of Assyria and did not serve him. He struck the Philistines as far as Gaza and its territory, from watchtower to fortified city. In the 4th year of King Hezekiah, which was the 7th year of Hoshea, son of Elah, king of Israel, Shalmaneser, did I say that right? No. Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, came against Samaria and besieged it. He seized it at the end of 3 years. In the 6th year of Hezekiah, that is the 9th year of Hoshea, king of Israel, Samaria was taken. Then the king of Assyria exiled Israel to Assyria and put them in Hala and in Habor by the river of Gozan and the cities of the Medes, because
Peter, it's there on the screen. 2 Kings 18.
they did not obey the voice of the Lord their God,
Yeah.
but transgressed his covenant and all that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded. and would not obey or do them. All right, that's the end of that section. Now we're going to go into the section called Sennacherib invades Judah. In the 14th year of King Hezekiah, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came against all the fortified cities of Judah and captured them. Hezekiah, king of Judah, sent word to the king of Assyria at Lachish, saying, I have done wrong. Turn away from me. I will bear whatever you put on me. So the king of Assyria required Hezekiah, king of Judah.
Well, I don't know what your interest is in this particular critique thus far. Even though, I mean, you've given me some ideas at the forefront there, but I didn't. I'm not really picking up on anything except maybe like a new Bible student just trying to read some Bible online so far.
Yeah, she does sound like a bit of a noob. I guess that was a main part of my critique. Yeah, also the kind of ambiguity there when she was like, well, if you are God shopping and you find a God that, is okay with child sacrifice, then you probably got the wrong God. I thought that was a bit of an oversimplification of the subject. But yeah, this was just generally a video I was looking at critiquing, so I brought it in. I'm actually trying to find where she's at now, but I know I'm looking at the NIV and she's an MEV, so it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
It's a much more interesting story. And hello, Peter and Sammy out there. I saw Sammy earlier. No, I was just trying to bring something to the stream because
That's cool.
Other than that, I mean, we could talk about the Trinity. That was the only other thing I had freshly on my mind. But yeah.
Oh yeah, why do you like to talk about the Trinity?
Because I can't make it make sense.
Because of the contradictory nature of three beings in one.
Right.
Did you ever look into the something like the essence energy distinction? Because it's very important how you're predicating identity in order to argue against it, right? Like you have to be. Your argument would rely on how you understand identity over time, and of course, how you'd have authority to challenge the scriptures by what means you find truth. Even questions like, why is being in contradiction a problem? Why is it wrong? Is that something someone's ever asked you?
Well, I mean, yeah. So it seems to defy the fundamental laws of logic, right?
Well, yeah, you would be, but the question becomes, like, why is being in contradiction a problem? Like, you take like maybe a secularist view of morality and well-being, and people do contradictory things all the time in order to increase their well-being.
Well, yes. I mean, you can do something immoral in order to increase your well-being, but that doesn't make it less immoral. So it's still, I mean, you're in contradiction with your own moral conceptions.
Well,
but that's not contradicting the thing in itself.
Right, but when you say your moral conceptions, if you're pointing out that somebody's being contradictory, I would say that relies on you having an assessment and understanding of what right and wrong are, that you ought not to be contradictory, that it's more than you just getting them to agree with you, that they ought not to be contradictory. And I would ask what you rely on in order to make that, other than it's a subjective preference.
Well, I rely upon the principle of non-harm. So I mean, when taken down to the foundation, it's that I think that the correct moral choice is that which causes no harm or the least possible amount of harm.
That's that sort of a anarchist, voluntarist, libertarian, non-aggression principle. Is that a term you're familiar with, the NAP?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm trying to think of how well anarchism like would necessarily entail that there is no right or wrong, in my view. So I don't think it aligns with that.
They all do, and I would move to point out that you do too. Without God, I've come from a background of anarchism, studying it, and libertarianism. I thought they had some great ideas. The non-aggression principle spoke to me as well, but when it comes down to it, all you have is an agreement based on an arbitrary idea of harm not being good, right?
Well, yeah, ideally non-harm, but like I said, with the least amount of harm, I think is the best we can realistically do. Let's say with minimal harm.
But still, the principle itself is subjective, and it relies on agreements, which moves into an appeal to popularity, right? To move it forward, or at least an agreement with your interlocutor to start.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we can have an objective view of what harm is, and then we can have varying degrees based on those subjective sense of what causes me harm. Like somebody could call me the N-word. I'm not going to be harmed by it, but another person might have a different perspective on that.
That's kind of the problem.
Either way, it's
actually that's kind of the problem you've kind of located is there's no end to that. In fact, because I can say this is where that goes. Let me lead you down that path. I can say your presence is causing me harm, and I'm justified because I'm locating harm, and I don't have to necessarily express it. And the elimination of you will alleviate that harm, therefore creating less harm. It gets into those ideas that can't actually be blocked by the theory itself because it's completely subjective.
right. Yeah, and I think we do have to have a shared sense of what is reasonable for a person to expect as far as safety and security, right? You'd say, like, if we're all sharing this mutual space, I'd say, well, I expect that people won't do this thing to me, and then I do depend on my peers or something like that to legitimize my concern, right?
Faith in your fellow peers, sure.
Right.
And their consistency over time, in fact, that they will adhere to these ideas that you've agreed upon. However, when you really look at what's binding them, it's what? Your word, right? At best.
Well, it's my word, but it's also their shared subjective appreciation for my position, even if they have not been in that situation themselves. If they can empathize with that.
So, don't you think that you could make a case like that for Stalin and his army, that they were thinking in those terms, but they needed to eliminate a large group of people in order to get to that idea? They just had a broader scope or slightly different variation of what you're talking about, but that meant they had to take out a certain group of people, in fact, tens of millions, in order to see this bigger picture of well-being and less suffering over time.
No, I don't think. I think that undermines the principle in itself. If you say the principle is non-harm, you say, well, these people are causing me harm, and the only way that I can alleviate of that is to eliminate for those people. Well, then you're causing a further harm.
Well, so how do you stop the theory from being expansive, saying that they have a theory over time? All the millions and tens of millions of harm that they're going to cause now are going to be effectively less harm over time. If they have built a theory, you can sort of disagree with the theory, but it's still a theory that they have about harm that they can implement into their moral system, right? And then when you try to refute the different aspects of their theory itself, well, you have a right and wrong. You have to have a right and wrong in place in order to do that informationally, which you're saying would just be an agreement, and all they really have to do is disagree with you, and you can't really overcome that.
I mean, I suppose that's true in a certain sense, but it doesn't seem to agree with the universal nature.
Wait a sec.
If we have us as a species,
right there, universal nature. There you go. And tell me more about this. Yes.
well, the universal nature of the principle would be that it would apply to all of our category of things.
That's a huge epistemological claim, though, right? Like you're bringing in this knowledge claim about a universality of a moral that's what present in the human race itself. Like, how would you have knowledge of that? Where would you point to that empirically? Right?
Well, I think most of us have this intuition.
Well, what about the ones that don't, though? They're wrong?
Yeah, I mean, they would be objectively wrong. Even
objectively wrong? Now, how are you going to bring them?
They may feel correct.
Wait a second. They're objectively wrong based on the standard that you created?
Well, I didn't create it.
So if enough people gather together and bind to something that one of them creates originally, it becomes objective in a sense that it's an ad populum?
True. I mean, well, we started off talking about well-being, so I think if we start off with the non-harm principle and we end with well-being, so well-being actually isn't the objective at the outset. The objective is non-harm, but the end result there is well-being. And then we can align a little bit differently and say, well, what is best off, what objectively does not harm most people? And that aligns with the goal of the most possible, the best possible outcomes for most people.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I think that I'm just pointing out that what you have here is a subjective system. And the interesting thing about subjective systems is that they break down to preference. And when you explore where the preference is and the value that it has or the authority that it has, it doesn't seem that any one man has any more preference authority than another. And that's what you're talking about here is like building some sort of agreement. It's similar to what politics do, like pragmatism. They don't really have the fundamental questions answered or the philosophies intact. They just get a mob appeal or democracy and decide, oh, we're going to do it this way because this is what most people feel. But that's ultimately based off of feelings and what seems to be the case and what seems to be popular. And I would just ask you, don't you think that there's something more beyond a human preference that binds us to what's right and wrong, even in the sense of like informationally having conversations, the way we utilize information and transfer it, that there's a right way to do that and a wrong way to do that, even though it doesn't seem to cause harm? Because that's a lot of times that's where harm starts, isn't it? In misinformation.
I mean, that's true. I think we're talking about like more of an intersubjective type of scenario where, I mean, not to undermine, the ad populum might be fallacious in philosophical reasoning, but in everyday life we get along through intersubjective agreements, and these are like, larger scale agreements that we make with society, that we're not going to run red lights and all of this stuff, right?
Well, hold on. You're saying you break away from a principled philosophy to a pragmatism that just overrides it?
No, I think the principle in philosophy still stands, but pragmatically we have to deal with the world differently.
Give me an example of that.
So let's say a drunk driver goes through a stop sign and kills my kid. So I might have the subjective opinion that is my right to go and slay that person, right? But in reality, there's a whole set of circumstances that led to their doing what they did, and there is a system set in place for justice that says, hey, you don't actually just get to go and run this person over with your car because they made a mistake.
Well, why
right?
did you
That's
say
not how
that?
justice works.
Why did you say that one of those was in reality? I noticed you made a
Well,
claim.
one
but in
one is
reality,
one is conceptual, and one is the actualization of that concept. So there's justice in my mind, and there's justice as it functions in the real world.
well, wait a second though. The real world functions in the way that people's minds it's interactive. So I don't see how you're making a. You're saying you seem to be saying that the status quo or the system in place is somehow objective and your single mind is subjective. But I'm saying that the system in place it seems to be subjective as well, just larger and more forceful and with more people behind it.
I mean, that could be the case. I mean, we have to trust that the larger majority is going to override all of our personal emotional concerns. That's a faith that we have in the system.
Like in Nazi Germany in the 40s. If you were a Jew, that kind of faith.
Well, I mean, I would say that could be an example of it, but I mean, a counterbalance to that
It
is
is
that
that
the
is
majority
evidence.
of the rest of the world disagreed with those Nazis, right?
What about Mao's communist China? The numbers are even larger. You're getting up into 70, 80 million.
Well, yeah, there's a lot more factors at play over a longer period of time there, and
The point is like, what is the right standard? It doesn't seem to be anything other than a subjective standard that you hold now and that you recognize in the past, perhaps. In those examples of Mao's China and Hitler's Germany and Stalin's Russia are huge examples and evidences. Just less than 100 years ago. What is it that you think is actually in place other than an agreement that you want to make?
well, I think in a sense it's people putting in a rein on putting reins on my emotions, and so to take it back to the scale down a bit, my personal subjective sense of being wronged by a person who made a mistake, right? And how
Well, hold on,
severe
hold on
ought
though.
their punishment be?
A mistake implies another wrong. How did we get to that?
Well, that part doesn't seem to matter. It's
Okay.
my sense of being wronged. Is that proportional to the action of that person or whatever
That
action I
sounds
would
like
take
an
against them?
arbitrary. That sounds like an arbitrary scale. How do you come to the terms of that type of scale of measurement? What does that rely on?
Well, I mean, so the common standard is like an eye for an eye, right? Like if you killed one of mine, I will kill one of yours. But we know objectively throughout history that doesn't work. That doesn't solve problems.
Wow, how do we know that objectively? I don't understand that.
Because throughout history, we have evidence of it just perpetuating more and more violence.
I mean, the Sopranos disagree with you. The government disagrees with you. They use violent force as part of their methodology. It solves problems.
The government uses force until it no longer suits them, and then they cease to use force and claim to be a peaceful democratic establishment. So,
Well,
I mean,
they're using
even in communist countries, they've had to dial it back and say, "Oh, wait, no, we're not that bad." As soon as the internet gets involved, you know.
Right. I mean, there's public relations and all that, but it's all based on violent force, and coercion. That's not disputable.
So I think we're moving to the force principle or force doctrine, but we were talking about justice originally, and I was thinking of true justice, and that's kind of where my sense came in, as far as what is just in the like the Socratic sense.
Yeah, right. You're going to move towards Well, I think all you have established so far is just a certain feeling and emotion coming from certain people in different time periods, right? That's what you have thus far.
Well, no, I'm actually going with the opposite. I'm saying that many of our intuitions about what justice is subjectively are wrong. And it's only when we are reined in by our fellows that we find out that justice actually is not as heavy handed as we might expect it to be.
Well, how did they bring us in, and what did they bring us into that said, oh, we just had a subjective perspective, and now I see the bigger objective perspective, for instance?
Because if we ask most people, if this person has an accident and they kill my kin, should I be allowed to then kill them in turn? And most people will say no.
Why are most people on authority? That's back to communist China, Stalin's Russia, Hitler's Germany.
Well, it's the closest approximation to objective consensus that we can get. People who have or have not, people of a variety of experiences outside of our own, who are then taking a look at whatever situation that we are in, that we cannot emotionally separate ourselves from.
Yeah, but what is the authority behind that study to say
well,
that
the authority
that
is that they are not emotionally invested as we are?
Who is
it? Our fellows, our peers.
So we go for advice. We take a subjective position and go for advice to less emotional, subjective people, and give them authority because they bring less emotion to the handling of the case. I mean, I see what you're saying, but we're not really getting to what is actually true. You're just saying there's a different type of person in a situation and a different authority, and maybe more people that agree with that. These are just appeals to popularity of subjective ideas, preferences. That's all that's been laid out thus far.
Well, I mean, I guess if we can define what is just, right? Like, what do you think justice means?
Well, I come from a biblical perspective, so I'm going to go with a different sense of justice than just appealing to history or appealing to the current times or appealing to the masses. So I'm going to go to the idea that justice starts with the truth. Truth starts with God. So I would go into, biblical scriptures specifically on justice, perhaps to look into Solomon, David. I like to look at Proverbs, stuff like that, to find answers.
Okay. For myself, I feel that justice should be an unbiased and fair judgment of the facts without relating to the emotional state of those people involved. That's how I see justice.
Yeah, that sounds good. I don't disagree with most of that. I do, however, challenge the same ideas. Like what is that other than an anecdotal presentation of how you currently feel about the matter? Is there anything binding that to authority that's bringing it? Binding that to reality that's bringing it any authority?
What's bringing it authority?
Yeah, other than just you're a guy saying that right now.
I mean, I think that is how we tend to hold justice colloquially. Like, most people don't think of biblical justice when they think about...
you're on an island with 10 people.
Maybe.
I realize you got to eat one of you, and they voted to you, and you're like, well, that's justice in its purest sense. I can't argue with you guys. I don't want you to eat me, but,
Well, I mean, that might be, in a sense, pragmatism, but that's not justice. I mean, justice holds a particular weight in my
you can make a case about how it's just or unjust if you really think about that easily, right?
Well, no. Having a justification or being justified is different from justice being served. It's something you deserve to have.
Those are also closely related, though. I'm saying in a situation where you're being wronged, or bullied or ganged up on, it's pretty easy to bring up the idea of justice. It comes into play whether it's mentioned outright or not. Like you're saying, this is an injustice. You guys can't just eat me because you voted me, right? I mean, what's your justification for that? That's what I'm getting at with you. Like, that's what I would say to them. Like, how are you justified in saying anybody is right in doing anything? Where do you get rights
so
from?
your example actually brings it back to my initial principle, which was that
Okay.
the least amount or non-harm, total non-harm, or the least amount of harm is the main principle. And if we can avoid that at any cost, we should.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. But when asked what's binding that to reality, other than what you're coming up with,
The golden rule. It comes
the
back down to
golden
the
rule
golden
is
rule.
bound to reality. How?
It's bound to reality in that if I would not want it to be done to me, I would not wish it upon another.
It's bound to reality in that statement, or the actual sentiment, or the consistency of feeling that way, or the
The
non-violation of
sentiment
it.
or in the sentiment of it.
What about the violation of it, but still carrying it? What about, being a hypocrite with the rule itself, but still wanting others to adhere to it? Because that happens all the time, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, and I mean hypocrisy. I think is something that we have to deal with. I mean, it's there. Actually, it's probably very prevalent, but I don't think that should dissuade us from attempting to keep the rule.
Right.
I mean, if we're truly talking about righteous behavior, doing the best possible things in all scenarios, right? That should be a primary adherence.
I mean, it sounds good. I think you're just gonna have trouble when somebody challenges you on the relevance of it, other than you're saying things that sound good and you'd like them to agree with you and you seem reasonable. That's all there. But when it comes to the deeper philosophical questions of, transcendental ideas like meaning, value, and purpose, like where are you deriving those from to even get into what sounds good? If someone goes into what's prior to what sounds good, you might not be expecting that. You're like, why would you go there? It sounds good, doesn't it? And they go, well, yeah, it does, but I want to know how you got there. I want to
Well,
know.
in my opinion, like, and the Christian precept, and what I would think for any person claiming to be righteous, you would actually adopt those principles. So you would take an antithetical position, right? To, okay, here is a person who is doing harm. As a person who is righteous in the Word, my adherence would be not only to not do harm, but to be doing the most possible good for everyone. That would be the antithesis to the evil there.
Right. Yeah. Again, that's pointing out like how you would be in agreement with a Christian worldview, right? But still, if challenged by someone with a Christian worldview, that gets interesting. Like what you're actually validating or justifying, which seems to merge with Christianity, how you're getting there. That's always on the table. I think it's up for discussion. It's the nature of philosophy and theology, right?
Absolutely.
Not that we, yeah, I mean, because I've been talking about that with other people lately too. I'm like, I'll agree with you, but I want you to know, even in agreeing with you, I can fall back or go back to how you got there, because there's all sorts of things we agree on, but it's worth exploring how we got there, because how being in an agreement on something with very different reasons behind how you got there could lead to a very different long-term outcome. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you want to expound upon that a little bit. I mean, it doesn't seem to matter so much how you get to the conclusion if you arrive at the correct conclusion. But in order to educate other people, that might be a more difficult endeavor, right?
I lost the last. I'm sorry, I got distracted for a second. I was reading a comment.
No,
Yeah,
go for it.
somebody can come in if you want to. No, that's my bad. Say that again, though. I did want to hear that.
I was thinking that it doesn't matter so much if you arrive at the correct conclusion, how you arrive at that conclusion, but it matters in insofar as if you're trying to educate other people or trying to bring other people along with you, then the process matters. But personally, it doesn't really matter how you arrive there as long as you get to the right conclusion.
I mean, what makes you say that? It's like, it makes me think of algebra. Like, yeah, I came up with the number 4, and like, well, that's the right answer. And you're like, yeah, it doesn't even matter. You know what I mean? And like, well, no, it actually does.
Well, as long as you can get the right answer, it doesn't matter. But if you want other people to get the right answer, then it does.
Yeah, but how do you know you're getting the right answer, and how do you know you'll continually continue to get the right answer? That sounds like just chance, that you're just rolling the dice and going, oh, that seems right. That's cool. I'm not going to reflect on how or why that's right.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you have one formula and it works for you, you would just keep using that formula, and that's kind of a matter of faith. Until you arrive at a point where it doesn't work for you anymore, and then you have to reevaluate what you're doing, right?
Well, I think your philosophy is pragmatism.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, pragmatism is like, it tends to be the enemy of Christian worldview. In fact, because it skips all the a priori commitments, the meaning, the value, and the purpose for life itself into, well, we're just here, we're queer, and let's move forward type of thing.
Well, you have the flip side of that, though. The other side of the Christian worldview that is not pragmatic says, well, if it doesn't work for us, we're just going to keep using it and hope that things work themselves out, right? And then how long does that go on?
Yeah, what do you speak of there?
Like an extreme example would be like the faction. Sorry, I skipped a few words there. The faction that says like God hates fags. How does that work out for you?
The Westboro Baptist Church.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah, that's extreme. Yeah, at the funerals, and wow, it's too much.
Yeah,
Well,
and
no,
they're even like doing the same thing to U.S. war veterans, so they really hold no quarter.
well, you know what the thing about it is, what you have there is you have like a principled stance that's the idea of the objective truth that doesn't change over time. The culture, the people, they move in a direction away from that, and you get this very what is the correct way to put that? Well, you just distortion of that which is true, and it gets painful at times like that when the contrast or the juxtaposition of the Westboro Baptist Church holding up the burning hell bags at the funeral, like, wow, that is burnt. But this is from the teachings of Paul, right?
Right.
That the Christian worldview adheres to. So as we see time move on, does that change the way that we should adhere to the scriptures? The Christian worldview says no. Your argument becomes, like we've been discussing the whole time, getting into ethics and whatever you want to bring in, non-aggression principle, which is, it's always connected to the ethical perspective. It doesn't really seem like you're making a case, except that, well, that's how you feel, and you can get people to agree with you, and it sounds pretty good. That becomes the problem, is you're saying, oh, I've arrived here. I don't know how, though. We want to know how, or Christians still want to know how, for instance.
Well, I mean, for me, and this is anecdotal, but I've by my research of religion and faith over the years, and coming to be a non-theist, I reach these conclusions by secular means, and then I come back in and I'm like, okay, how does this apply to the church? And so I feel like like I come from a really fresh place that says, okay, what are the biblical teachings, specifically the teachings of Christ, and how does this apply universally in the most generalized sense I can think of it. And it just tells me that any persecution, any attempts at persecution by some denomination, are going to be met violently, right? Like this is going to end in a feud rather than in reconciliation, and so that's antithetical to the cause.
Well, you said you came from secular means back to the church, something along those lines, and then you just kind of you said that flippantly, and I'm thinking, what? That's what I want to know about. What does that mean? You went out into the world from the Amish community and danced with the secular world, and then you came back. But what is binding by your experience to the secular world is what I'm continually driving at, I would say, in the conversation, other than personal experience, observation, sense data, which is, quite literally feeling, like tactile data, for instance, what seems to be the case in your experience, subjective experience. What else are you bringing in from that secular experience, or however you termed it?
Well, I mean, I see that as being the most unbiased stance. So that, and I can't really go further than saying, "Hey, that's my experience."
What stance?
Not being tied to or affiliated to a sector denomination of believers.
Why do you think secularism is not tied to different dogmatic ideas?
Oh, I'm not claiming that it's not, but I'm saying that it is independent of the church or teachings within the church or any particular faith.
Why is that non-biased?
It's not completely unbiased, but I think it removes a degree of bias that would be implicit there.
The assumed bias, by the way, implies all sorts of things too. That you have the right understanding on some level to say, oh, that is biased in the wrong direction or too far leaning to the right. How do you have these knowledges?
Just personal deconstruction. And, I mean, most people in my life would probably say that I'm leaning left in that sense. I'm leaning liberal. And I don't really have a problem with that. But the thing is that I outwardly rejected teachings from the church, teachings from religious belief, and I still arrived at those conclusions, which seem to align with many of the believers that I talk to.
Yeah, I'm listening to you. I think it's just assumed here that there's a right way, is what the overview of this whole conversation, in most conversations, in fact.
Well, I think it's that there's less of a right way, but there's definitely many identifiable wrong ways.
Still, though, think about that. Like, the many identifiable wrong ways show you that there's a right way. The focus may just be on the wrongs in a given time period and so forth. But again, it's showing you that there's a standard in place somewhere. I appreciate the conversation, the way you converse as well, in calmness, the way you listen. I think that we're going to, in this conversation, it's going to keep going into the same place at this point. But it's fine. We can redirect or continue. I'm just thinking, like you like you're assuming there's a standard, and I'm trying to say, like, how are we going to locate that, right? Because I'm coming from a Christian worldview, and there's many things in the Bible that are hard to understand, controversial, many things you disagree with. But if we're going to go outside of that, what is the standard in place that we're looking at, right? That's what I'm trying to hone in on ultimately. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I don't want to get us in a quagmire here, and I definitely appreciate it. I mean, again, I harken back to kind of where we started off. We go to the principle of non-harm and kind of extend out from there, but that's my reasoning. And I mean, I can't, if I try to justify it, I say yes, there is some subjective sense of what is harmful, but I think most of us come to a common agreement, and that may be ad populum, on what we perceive or conclude to be harmful and non-harmful. But yeah, that may be open to another subjective interpretation. But yeah, I appreciate your time, and I don't want to waste it if you got something going on or whatever.
No, I'm not wasting time. I'm saying I appreciate the conversation. Actually, I just don't know where to go with it. Actually, because I tend to drive in a certain direction of finding a standard that my interlocutor is talking about. Right? Like you're saying things that I can agree with. You're saying things that I think are good, like non-aggression principle in general. But from the Christian worldview, the problem becomes that the Christian is arguing from an objective position. Whether you agree with that or not is one thing, but that's a position that they're coming from. And then whether or not you can dismantle that with a subjective position is another thing. That's why the transcendental argument comes into play. That you're arguing, the starting point of all things, the precondition for all things. That's the reason for that type of argument. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
To give strength to the objectivity of the argument, the ethical structure of the argument, the metaphysical structure that all starts with God, that we have knowledge from God, which is epistemological, which I don't think are separate. Secular philosophies tend to separate ontology and epistemology, but I think they're bound. But anyway,
that it does lead me to an absurdity. Like, why is a rock not morally culpable as a human is, as a dog is? Why are we not all equally morally culpable in that case? But
what do you mean by that? From a naturalist view, why would that be the case?
Well, yeah, all things are created by God, right? So
well,
why
the human is created in the image of God. The creature is going to be a special, particular being. The ape is going to be a separate animal.
Okay, yeah, I get that.
Right. And then, again, there's many things you would dispute with the Christian worldview, and getting into scriptures and all that. And I don't typically do that with good reason, because I'm saying, even though you don't agree that the Christian worldview is an objective position, or the transcendental argument is valid, if that was the case, if you were making an argument, what stands to reason is that a Christian argument from the transcendental argument is a valid argument. If you want to challenge the soundness, if you want to challenge the objectivity of the Christian worldview, and so forth and so on, coming from a subjective standpoint and an autonomous argument, it's going to be very problematic, because you can't account for all these things you assume, all these transcendental categories, for instance.
Right. That's definitely something I will have to work on to address that argument. But it does interest me. So, yeah, I thank you for bringing it up. I see the relatedness of the two, but I feel like there's a little bit of a double bind there, where it's like, well, why do we have to have one necessarily to have the other? But hey, Hillary's.
Hey, what's up, man?
Oh, hello. Oh, I was just gonna see if you want to talk about what the Bible says about people who make false accusations against others and then don't allow those others to speak.
You wanted to talk about that right now?
Well,
I guess if you can weave it into
after all the vitriol that you've been putting out, making false accusations against people, I thought maybe you'd want to, address some of that. But that's only if you have any bravery whatsoever.
Dang it.
And clearly Peter W. has none, because he makes all these nonsensical statements, but yet he's hiding behind somebody else's skirts that has me blocked.
Well, what do you think? We were talking about justice earlier. What do you think we should do about
So I
that?
don't listen to you. If you have me blocked, I'm kind of like what's his face? Yeah, if you're so afraid of my voice, then I probably don't want to listen to yours.
Well, Kevin was talking about justice.
Well, like I said, your channel is blocked. If Kevin was broadcasting on his channel, I'd be more than happy to listen. But when you take voices away from people, then that makes you voiceless.
But you're using your voice to express or imply that your voice has been taken away.
No, what I'm doing is
What do you mean no?
telling you. No, I'm answering. What I'm doing is informing everybody that you've had me blocked for weeks. You talk all this nonsense saying, oh, I want to have my worldview critiqued. Can anybody come in to talk about Darth Dawkins? But if you hide the very people that are most likely to give you an adequate critique, I better not say adequate. When you hide the people that are most likely to give you the critique that you're claiming that you want, it just shows what a hypocrite and liar you are.
Yeah, but you weren't
I don't know
blocked.
what God says about liars.
Hey, you weren't blocked on the critique
Yes,
for Darth. What are you
yes.
talking about?
No, for weeks I am.
No,
And
you just
I've got the proof.
you can
but-
always pop in the link. What are you talking about?
Oh, as long as you walk away and play your techno music, or you don't answer people and just leave them in the backs, for hours.
No, I'm saying
I'm not
when.
going to sit back there
What
for
are you
long
talking
periods of
about,
time.
dude?
You're a
What-
coward. Do you want to, I don't know, apologize? Show any accountability for your behavior?
Your details are off, is what I'm telling you. Like you can
No,
always.
I'm giving a factual account, and you're just backpedaling. So, do you want to admit the truth?
I
or you
don't
just
agree
want to
with your
continue lying?
account, is what I'm saying, dude.
You're lying. I got it. And now Peter W. and everybody else sees
Okay,
the
what
liar you are
you know,
too.
we were actually having a pretty good discussion. So, do you want to engage in the discussion, or you just want to take off because you're not really adding anything?
So what you're saying is that you can't handle speaking with me, so you're just going to leave me blocked for weeks at a time, and then
You want to
lie.
be in the comment section, is what you're
How
saying?
can I discuss? No, I just want to make sure that Peter W. and you are displayed for everyone to know what hypocrites and liars you are.
I
And
don't think
if
that
you
many
like,
people care, dude.
if you'd like a discussion about the Christian worldview, we can say what the Christian worldview says about hypocrites and liars. Do you have any verses that come to mind?
Yeah, I get it, dude. So you want to be in the comment section? Because I mean, I guess I would prefer that rather than this, because we were kind of doing a discussion, and you're not really engaging in that. So I'll put you in the comments and then let you go on the live. You want to do that? Okay, I'll just do that. Hold on, let me check that for you. He's very insistent, that one.
I'm innocent. I don't know what happened there.
I don't know either, dude. I hardly know him, but I had him blocked for a while because he's saying negative comments, but he's saying negative things in live too. So just give me a sec. I'm gonna try to put him in the comments. Hopefully, he won't get himself kicked. I'm not really too concerned with it. I'm wasting a lot of time doing this. I can't even find it. Anyway, what were we talking about? I'm just going to see if I can find it. But where were we?
I'm trying to recall. Yeah, I mean, I think we were at grounding morality. It was kind of where we left off there.
Yeah, that would kind of always be the problem, right? When challenged with what you're bringing to the table with the Christian worldview, because it's claiming to be an objective worldview with an objective argument of all reality, which I know you would disagree with, but the problem becomes, can you dismantle it from an autonomous philosophy?
Yeah, I think the only thing we can do there, I mean, is if we extend morality outwards into the kingdom of the domain of animals and plants and you know, if we can generalize those principles, it would make sense. But because we can't, because we know that random occurrences do happen, then we have to provide a third explanation for those which are outside of the domain of morality, right?
Well, yeah, where are you getting the morality in the lion hunting whoever he wants in the in the jungle, right? Like, it's not a moral thing; it's just what the lion does, right?
Right. I mean, and it's necessary for the lion to hunt for it to survive. So, while this seems to violate the non-harm principle, it then extends out to, well, but I have to sustain for myself, and this is the only way that I have to sustain for myself. Then it becomes a moral act or a just act.
It becomes one.
Well, yeah, as soon as you can reason to this is the means of sustenance and there is no other clear way to sustain oneself, it becomes just.
According to what principle?
That would just be the law of nature.
The law of nature.
Yes.
Where does science discover this law of nature?
Well, I mean, it's proved by means of like survival of the fittest, things like that. So, I mean, that
That's
does play into it.
philosophy.
No, I mean, it's a biological fact. Kill or be killed.
Not necessarily. I mean, I mean, I see what you're saying, but it's not a law that's known by science. It would be a philosophy of what they think they're seeing a pattern.
Well, but they would have to have some. They would have to have some clear alternative present to them and be able to discern between one or the other.
They do. They have cases where that doesn't have. Well, I don't know if that's what you're speaking to, but like cases where people don't preserve themselves, suicide, stuff like that. I don't know if that's what you're going. I might have spoke too quickly. But
no,
anyway,
I mean, I agree that that's a factor, but I think that comes down the road. Like, sustenance has already been provided, and one chooses to not partake in sustenance or to eliminate themselves.
Right, but I'm saying to call it a law of nature is a big step. It's not something that would be discoverable by science.
Well, it's intrinsic in the pattern of what we see. That is what most creatures do. Most creatures try to sustain and propagate themselves. That's just a law of nature.
Is a law changing?
The law is changing according to whatever sustains that particular creature, yeah.
But how is it a law if it's changing?
Well, the law remains the same. Sustenance and procreation, right? So that is a fixed law. Now, the parameters under which that takes place might change. So, for instance, if some species is out there and they have like one male and 100 females, and none of those females want to procreate with them, well, then that one male may go and violate that principle of non-harm in order to carry out its biological duty, right, to procreate. So that may justify an immoral act in order to carry forth with the species.
Well, wait a second though. If it's just an emergent law, how do you have a stagnant or non-emergent or non-changing morality?
We have two things there. You have the basic moral law, which is being violated in favor of the biological imperative. And
The
as long as we
basic
have the
moral law?
biological imperative, it will override that moral law.
What's the basic moral law? Given
Well, the
in this
moral law is the principle of non-harm.
But you're saying all things in nature already abide by that. In fact, you've located that, or you have a philosophy that that's present.
Well, yeah, I think most things in nature adhere to that law just naturally. It's the path of least resistance.
Right, and I see what you're saying there. So you think that a law was? I mean, have you continued to think about where this came from? The law would have just generated out of what? In
Well,
nature?
I'm not saying that it might. Well, I'm not saying that it might not have been imparted by God, right? That could be the case. Whether we have evidence for that is up in the air, right? We could say that it came from God. We could say that it came from the universe, or just our basic inclinations towards
How do you get
cooperation.
causality from just the universe itself? Like, how do you get it came from in a
Well,
causal?
because that's where we all came from.
But
Like,
you're
we can
saying
only infer that at best the universe is God.
when you say we can only infer at best the universe is God, who are you speaking for?
Well, I'm in that sense I'm speaking as a pragmatist, but to say that if we cannot identify a personal, benevolent, intelligent creator, then we would just say, well, yeah, sure. I mean, maybe it's like pantheism or something, and
But
the
when
universe spawned us, and so we are bound by its laws.
But when somebody says that they have located it, it's been revealed to them, there's really no argument, even from your position morally, that they can't or shouldn't hold that unless it moves over to an aggression on some level that you think is harmful. You really have no argument against that, right?
Well,
But
yeah, I think they're still fundamentally adhering to the same rules that we all adhere to, but they're just claiming a different source for the for the instantiation of that.
But see, this is one of the examples where source matters, right? Because when you have source, well, depending on what you're claiming source is, there's a difference of like pragmatic, poof, we're here, let's do what we can, versus no, there's a beginning point, a midpoint, and then a purpose or an end point to all this. So how you get there is not going to necessarily just work or be cohesive with those things in mind. You got one person with a purpose in mind and the other person like, let's just see where this goes. It's a very different lifestyle, isn't it? Even with the same agreement in place, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's already a purpose, though. Like, so
Well,
if the purpose for us in the universal context is just, again, is sustaining ourselves and reproducing ourselves, that is a
yeah, but
purpose.
you hear what you're saying? It's just all about you.
No, it's about, well, each individual, yes, but
Yeah, but that's
collectively
where
make
it
them whole.
goes. Like you say, oh, it's about all of us, but then it really just comes into it's all about you and what you want. And that's what you have here is you have a construct built on pragmatism, what's pragmatic. We're just here, we're queer, let's go. And it's all about really what I want. If I can make it what other people want and influence them and get on the same page as them, we can expand that out. But it's all about me and then hopefully into the larger group. It sounds good.
That's it translates into the theological framework because God says, "Go forth, be fruitful, and multiply." He says the same thing.
Sure. Again, but this is a difference between you just skipping over steps and jumping into that agreement versus the complete theology of why we're here, what we're doing here, and where this is going. You understand what I'm saying, though. I'm sure you do, that to have a different purpose in mind is going to mean a very different thing, even coexisting.
I do, yeah, I agree there. I should probably jump. I have to get some kids to bed here, but I think this has been a very fruitful conversation, by the way, and I do appreciate it. And yeah, just wanted to say that again before I go. But yeah, thanks,
Okay,
Jay.
man. I enjoyed it too, man. I'll see you again sometime, man.
For sure.
Yeah. Take care,
All right,
brother.
much love, my friend.
All right. Well, that was kind of interesting. I've only talked to him a couple times, but we'll probably see more of him again. He's very good listener, good speaker, mild mannered, definitely. But I'm gonna go back and play some music. He just popped in there unexpectedly. Wow, it's like an hour and a half went by. Love those kind of discussions, though. Love it. Time flies.